What if I told you that you could get your dream body working out 5 times per week and doing half the amount of volume that you are currently doing? You might call me crazy, and that's fine. For so many years, a lot of people thought that the key to getting jacked was basically just blasting a bunch of volume. And that was until recently. You see, Jeff Nippard, he basically uploaded a video like around 7 months ago, I'm pretty sure. And in that video, what he did was he basically cut the amount of sets that he was doing in half for, I think it was 100 days. That meant that he was basically, for each of his exercise and his workouts, he was basically doing either 1 or 2 sets for them. The results, well, basically at the end of the 100 days, he actually ended up gaining strength. And here's the crazy part, he was actually on a cut for the 100 days. So that meant he basically gained some muscle and he lost the fat that he was wanting to lose on the cut. And this is pretty crazy, especially considering that Jeff Nippard, I think he's been training for around 15 years. This is kind of turning into a Jeff Nippard Glaze video, but yeah, so basically he was training for 15 years and he still, when he was on a cut, he ended up gaining muscle. So this is an amazing news, especially if you're a natural lifter like myself. This means that you don't have to be blasting a bunch of crazy volume for your workouts. You don't even need to be in the gym 6 times a week to be making muscle at all. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, why should I trust this guy? He's a random YouTuber. I'm gonna stick to my high volume. And you know what? That's a pretty fair criticism, to be honest. And you might be thinking, well, don't I need at least 10 to 20 sets per week to even gain muscle? Well, not necessarily, because it turns out the amount of sets you do is important. Like, I'm not going to say that you should do 1 set per week per muscle group and you're good. But what matters more than the amount of sets you do per week is how hard you are pushing in those sets. But don't just take my word for it. I heavily encourage you guys to try this out. If you are doing, for example, let's say you're doing like 20 sets per week for each muscle group, I heavily encourage you guys to cut that volume down to maybe 10 sets per week. I mean, 20 divided by 2 is 10. So yeah, okay, so 10 sets per week per muscle group. Stick with this for at least a month. And basically, guys, the most important thing that you have to remember if you are indeed going to try this out, which I heavily recommend, is to make sure that you're pushing very close to failure for all of your sets. And it wouldn't be crazy to say 8 sets per week per muscle group is more than enough to actually grow your muscles. Now you might be saying, okay, this sounds pretty cool and all, but like, I don't really want to try this out and then end up losing muscle and basically doing everything that I did for no reason. I mean, that would suck, to be honest. Well, don't worry, guys, because there was basically a study from, let me see the name. Okay, so Bickle and a bunch of colleagues, they basically had 70 participants train legs 3 times per week for 16 weeks. Each session, they were doing about like 8 to 12 reps, you know, pretty normal stuff. And they basically ended up doing around 27 total leg sets per week. So that's pretty high volume, in my opinion, for legs. And then after that, they basically went to a phase 2 with the same participants, where they basically maintained the same intensity for all their workouts. But all they did was they reduced the number of sets per exercise. So they used to do 3 sets per exercise, and then in phase 2, they started doing 1 set per exercise. And the training frequency went down from 3 times a week to 1 time a week. So that means they were in the gym 1 time per week for legs, and they were doing 1 set per exercise. That means they only did 3 sets per week for their legs. That's it. And I want to ask you guys this question. What do you think happened when they actually did that? So for example, what happened in the study was they were training pretty high volume for their legs. Maybe they made some muscle. And then what they did is they basically went from 27 sets per week for their legs down to only 3. Do you think they kept their muscle? Do you think they gained muscle? Do you think they stayed the same? Well, what actually happened was for 8 months straight, they actually maintained their muscle mass. So doing only 3 sets of legs per week, they maintained their muscle mass for 8 whole months. So what does this mean for you? Well, this basically means don't be scared to try out low volume. If they were able to maintain their muscle mass for 8 months, only doing 3 sets of legs per week, you could definitely try out cutting the amount of volume you're doing in half. And worst comes to worst, maybe you'll maintain, but I'm very sure you're going to gain some good muscle. The benefits of doing low volume is pretty obvious, but I thought I might as well just list it out since we're already here, just to make it pretty crystal clear. The first main benefit is that when you are reducing the amount of sets that you do, you're able to push more of those sets closer to failure, which is very important. And you're not heavily fatiguing yourself. And rest is extremely important, guys, when it comes to building muscle. I'm sure you guys know this, but rest is almost as important, or I would say as important as going to the gym itself. So if you're always heavily fatigued after your workouts, let's say you're doing like like 40 sets per work, 30 sets per workout, something crazy like that. It's going to be hard to recover and you're going to be pretty fatigued, and maybe you'll start to enjoy the gym less, to be honest. And it might not seem like a big deal in those moments. Let's say you're doing a workout. Let's say you have 30 sets to get through, maybe even 40 sets. It might not seem that big of a deal. Maybe you have a crazy pump. But guess what, guys? Over the long term, over 3 months, you're going to be pretty burnt out. So cutting the amount of sets you do in half is going to help you a lot. Especially, it will help you stay consistent, which is the most important thing in the gym. Now, the second benefit is that you're going to be saving a lot of time in the gym. I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I don't want to be spending more than an hour and 15 minutes in the gym. That's just me. You guys might be different. But for me, if I'm in the gym for like 2 hours, I start to think that I'm wasting time and I'm just doing a bunch of nonsense, because you really shouldn't be in the gym for longer than an hour, to be honest. I personally knew people that would be in the gym for like 2 hours straight, just talking with people. And if they like that, then that's completely fine. But for me personally, it's just not me. I don't want to be in the gym for 2 hours. When you reduce the amount of sets you're doing in half or a quarter or however much you want to reduce them by, you do end up saving quite a lot of time in the gym without sacrificing gains, which is the most important part. Now let's go ahead and talk some signs. How would we know that reducing the amount of sets we do in half is actually helping us build muscle and we're not, let's say, maintaining our gains? Because that's extremely important. You don't want to be in the gym for a month straight, all for nothing. I mean, that would be pretty horrible, to be honest. And don't worry, guys, because there's one simple metric that you can track to make sure that you are gaining muscle. And it's actually very easy. And it's something called progressive overload. I'm sure you guys know what it is. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. But all progressive overload is basically making sure that each workout, you do at least 1 rep more than your last workout. Either that or you're adding weight to your exercise every single workout, even if it's something small like 2.5 pounds. If you're not adding any more reps or weight to your workouts, then there might be a problem. You're either not resting properly or you're simply just not gaining muscle. Now, of course, there's going to be a couple of workouts where you're not able to add any reps or any weight. That's completely normal. But if, let's say, for 3 weeks straight, you're not making any progress, you're not adding any reps, you're not adding any weight to your workouts, then at that point, that would be considered a problem. Now, a lot of people do ask, like, when should I increase my weight? You know, how many reps should I be doing? All this random stuff. So I'm going to make it pretty simple for you guys. Let's say 6 to 12 reps for your set. And let's say you're doing 2 sets for, let's say, incline bench press, right? Something like that. Since the range is 6 to 12, once you hit 12 reps for both of your sets, then you're able to increase the weight by maybe 2.5 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then you just keep repeating that. So if you're able to hit 12 reps for both of your sets, then you know that you're able to increase your weight again. And that's literally it. Pretty simple, to be honest. And of course, for all of your exercises, you should be keeping relatively the same form, because you don't want to be adding reps by cheating, doing horrible form, because that's not an indicator that you are building muscle. That just means that you are cheating your reps, and that's it. Now, if you are still not convinced, just look at my personal story. This is me last year, and I was already training for 4 whole years. Fast forward to this year, this is what I look like now. Guess what I did? Well, you guessed it. I reduced my volume for my workouts. If you guys would like me to make a separate video on the exact split that I recommend, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Remember, when you're in doubt, look at whether or not you are progressively overloading.